Not every guitar hits the right note.
Some miss the mark entirely.
We spend a lot of time looking at like really cool guitars, guitars we love, guitars we think are amazing. We figured let's spend some time looking at these flops of the past.
Yeah, I mean, not every model has been a success. We've seen a lot of things come and go throughout the years. Companies are always trying to test the water and see what's going to stick. And sometimes they miss the mark entirely. And we're going to look at some of those massive failures.
Yeah, sometimes it's a new executive that they bring on board that's, maybe from a different industry and has a different idea about what's going to work. And or sometimes it's a long-serving executive that's maybe been there too long.
Mm-hmm. And another theme I think you're going to see throughout this video too is companies going outside the lane that they're in. They try to venture into a new lane and they get hit by oncoming traffic.
Yeah, there's only some companies that actually manage to pull that off, like going a completely other kind of manufacturing, other kind of instrument, and can do it. A lot of times it doesn't work out.
Let's take a look at some of these flops.
Probably the easiest targets to look at on this are the acoustic guitar makers that ventured into making electric guitars. Knowing how to make acoustic guitars and knowing how to make electric guitars is not really the same thing, as history has shown us.
And the appeal is really different. What people like in acoustic guitars, some of the aesthetics, some of the ideas, some of the concepts don't transfer as well to electric guitars. So we see that a lot of times when acoustic guitar manufacturers have tried to venture into that new lane. It just doesn't work out because they're coming from the wrong spot, the wrong place, and it fizzles.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes about often with an amount of overconfidence, let's say. They know how to make guitars. They've been doing this. They're extremely successful.
We can do it too.
We can do it too. We're going to go in. Well, the Martin Guitar Company knows how to make acoustic guitars, for sure.
Great acoustics, some of the greatest.
Yeah, like the greatest ever, most historic guitars. But their electric guitar attempts weren't so great, weren't so well received.
No, they had a real foray. I think it was late 60s, 70s, 80s. They've done a few different things along the way, but they made semi-hollow guitars. They even made a bass at one point. And these just didn't catch on in the market. I'm sure some of them are quasi-collectible now, but they did not catch on.
It looks like some of the designs look very of the fashion of the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, so we're going to make something that looks like a BC Rich. You wouldn't think that Martin would come up with that idea on their own. So it must have been somebody who was like, hey, these guys are doing this and this is selling. Let's just do what they're doing. And
we have access to that factory too.
Yeah.
We have access to it. Let's do it too.
Right. But yeah, it turns out didn't want it.
No,
people didn't want it.
I think if you're just copying someone else's brand, not saying that this is what Martin did, in ways they did, but if you're just copying someone else's brand and trying to make it your own, a couple tweaks to make it your own, that isn't necessarily going to land. It lands for some, but not for most.
No, if you're going to do that, if you're going to take a heavy influence from other brands that are doing it, you better do it better than they're doing it. You better do it way better.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, Collings obviously has like a Gibson influence on their electric guitar models. And that's a company that actually pulled it off, right? Like their guitars.
They're immaculate.
They're like, their electric guitars are perfect. Their acoustic guitars are perfect. I don't think there's really anyone else that's in that category that you can say at that level, right? They're kind
acoustic
of a
and
level
electric
on their own.
Yeah, absolutely they are.
Right. But they do it better than Gibson does. I mean, 100%.
Yeah, they certainly do. Much smaller scale too. So I think that's why they're able to do that.
Sure.
So Martin later on into the 80s had the Stinger brand, which was a second tier brand, kind of a Strat-like guitar. And that was another thing. It was made overseas, kind of fizzled out, didn't really hit.
It's hard to see why that didn't hit, isn't it?
Very hard to see.
Looking at the great graphic design work on the logo. When you're talking about failed guitars, this is often the first thing that comes out of anyone's mouth. I think it was mine, and I think our technician said the same thing. Talk about the Ovation Breadwinner. Now, before we go too deep into that, I want to say that I love that body shape. I think it's the coolest guitar shape. I think it's influenced like the Klein guitars. Well, a lot of like modern guitars take influence from that, but at the time, not successful.
Yeah, I think this was actually the first mass-produced guitar in America with active electronics. So it was pretty specialized in that sense. It did things that no other guitars were doing at that time, but the market didn't really receive them too well, and they became a thing of the past pretty quickly. Another acoustic company who ventured into the electric guitar world, Taylor Guitars. And these were actually kind of cool guitars. We sold them for a while, but
It was a big push.
there was a big marketing push, and the guitars were well made. They were interesting. They were doing new things like Taylor always does. But maybe too many new things and too many in-house proprietary things, it just didn't land.
No, it didn't really land with people. I mean, we did sell a bunch of these. We're talking about the Taylor solid body line that's now seems to be scrubbed from the internet entirely.
Harder to find.
But they were good guitars. Like they made, as you know, Taylors make good guitars. But some of the things like with the electronics and stuff,
Swappable pick guards,
Right.
swappable electronics.
I don't know if there's ever been a really successful modular pickup system, right? That's always an idea, like the mod.
It's interesting.
Yeah, take in and out pickups and put them in. But has that like ever flown for anyone, really?
It's a good question. You guys let us know. We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't think so, though.
But again, with those guitars too, like I can appreciate that they want to make their own parts and their own stuff, their own bridges, saddles, switches, potentially like everything was custom made by them. Now here what the danger is in that is like it's not well established. You don't know where the failures are going to be in these things. The saddles and the bridges, there was some like I think there was some problem with the metal in some of them.
Right.
And then it was impossible to find a replacement, that type of thing. So when you're looking at a guitar that's built that has like a, you know, a Goto 510 with a regular 5-way switch in it, these are things you're going to be able to work with in the future.
Yeah, that may be a lesson for some of these companies who want to do something like this down the road. It's not the worst idea to use parts that are easy to find, that are commonly available. Take the Dodge Viper approach.
Well, speaking of Taylor, now they've kind of done it right, like really the right approach. Andy Powers has done the Powers electric line, which is separate from the massive sort of machine of Taylor, right? It's not like they're not building like, we've got 20,000 guitars that we need to place like yesterday. And just the abundance of inventory and options and all that kind of stuff. They've done a really small scale.
They haven't even made 1,000 yet. So it is pretty small still at this point, very small scale.
And that's kind of maybe the right way to venture into new markets like this is like, you know, dip your toe in, get it right before going full steam.
If you're a Gibson fan, now would be a good time to turn off the video.
It's the first brand you think of when you think of cutting edge innovation.
They've done a lot of things throughout the years, and not only cutting edge, they've tried to venture into kind of the Strat style guitar, the bolt-on neck guitars, do some interesting things with active electronics. They've made a lot of models in the 80s, late 70s and the 80s that were not well received, that disappeared fairly quickly because the market didn't want them.
Right. Yeah, they have consistently put out a lot of guitars that nobody wants. They've definitely really put out, you know, a lot of different things. Now, that being said, because nobody wanted them, does that make these things more collectible? Does that contribute to the overall mystique of this brand? Because if there's one thing Gibson has, it's mystique. Because it's very strange. It's been throughout its entire history, right?
Strange is a way to describe it for sure. They've had a lot of variety throughout the years and what they've done. So in the 80s, we saw the Sonex 180, the Marauder, the Challenger. There was a lot of these guitars that are pretty easy to forget because they're not that exciting. Now, there was some interesting stuff that came out too. The RD kind of stuck, you know, it stuck around. The Victory, they're doing that again. So that must have been successful enough to bring it back, right?
Of course, that's the only reason you bring it back. But I think those RDs, some of them, they had there's the Moog electronics in them at the time.
Yeah, I think you're
right.
And
it was like 8 pounds of like electronics. It was
tone.
I think it was basically just the filter circuit stuff.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing to have.
It is interesting. They were pushing the boundaries. They had the Nighthawk too. Nighthawk, some people like that guitar. Not the most successful Gibson.
Yeah, like kind of the Les Paul meets a Telecaster, right?
Kind of.
Ahead of its time, because like now, you know, like Novo's doing that with a Solus F2, and that guitar kills. Like, it's awesome. Maybe the Nighthawk was just a little early.
Sometimes it's the right product in the wrong era.
Along the lines of Gibson trying to push technology, you know, in the early 2010s, they were coming out with guitars like the Darkfire robot guitar, the V1 robot guitar. Ideas, bold ideas. Perhaps a use of technology where you didn't necessarily have to have it. I understand trying something out, but they ended up really, they pushed it.
Maybe too far.
I think 2015 was about as far as anything could be pushed.
Yeah, I actually found an old email kind of outlining the changes that they made in 2015. And I'll put it up on the screen here. You can see all the things that they did. Not necessarily what the market was asking for. I think they were asking for kind of, hey, can you guys make a really good Les Paul, like the, you know, like the 50s? Yeah. Can you do that again? Because that's what we want.
That's kind of what we want. We want just a Les Paul. Can you make a Les Paul? Is it? Yeah, exactly.
But the answer to that was maybe the easiest target of the video, the Firebird X, everybody's favorite guitar out there. I mean, who doesn't love the Firebird X?
Right. I mean, immediately I think of like just like the E.T. Atari game that they like famously bulldozed and buried. I think they did the same thing with the Firebird X. Unsold units.
Gibson's had some marketing PR disasters throughout the years. This was one that's probably more memorable. You know, destroying all those Firebird X's. People don't really want to see that in today's day and age for a few different reasons. I understand they weren't selling, but, you know, destroying guitars always kind of gets a little dicey.
Not great. I'm sure the dealers that got forced to buy those guitars would wish they would just take them back to bulldoze them, because it was certainly there was a push for those guitars to be sold to end users. The only problem is no one wanted it. With good reason, because who wants that?
It was weird.
Who wants that? Like, honestly.
It had the robot tuners, right? It had the delay. It had the effects built into it. There was an external pedal. It did maybe too much. It did too much.
There's some things that just don't need to, that just unnecessary, right? Like, I don't need a pedal with my guitar. You know, I like that separate, like the guys that make pedals to do the pedals. I think.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
And even during that era too, we would get people coming in with those guitars, the 2015 Gibsons or anything with that super wide brass nut, the robot tuners, and they would be having them kind of restored to a vintage style Les Paul. Take it all out, scrap it. What can you make it it into for me?
I forgot about that. The nut was brass and wide.
Yeah.
It's really wide. Like, instead of like, we're going to figure out how to just like cut the nut slots properly, have them spaced properly. Like, so it's this, so the guitar plays right. It's like, we're going to make it bigger. So the sloppiness of the whole job is not falling off, the strings falling off the neck for you. It's like.
Was it maybe their boldest era?
I would say that's peak bold move, you know, like really. Like, you know, the Mad King sort of scenario. Like, he's lost his marbles, the guy who's running the company. Seemingly, everyone was afraid of him at the time, right? Like,
yeah, they tried to stay out of his lane.
Yeah.
You know, don't get too close.
Yeah, I remember talking to people that worked at Gibson at the time, and they were just like, I don't want him to know who I am if I can just avoid that.
And they've turned the page since. We'll give it to Gibson. They've turned the page, and now they're at a better point. Thanks for joining us today. If you have any other guitars that you want to add to the list, please leave those comments below. We'd love to hear what you think was a failed model, or tell us that we're wrong. Maybe some of these guitars are your sweethearts and we just insulted you, so we apologize.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If the Firebird X is your baby, then maybe this video wasn't for you. Give us a thumbs down.
Yes, that's true. But if you did like this video, please like and subscribe to see more content from us.